I was first diagnosed with breast cancer on July 2nd, 2003. My first thought, I can't believe this is happening to me. I exercised. I thought I ate all the right things. I felt as if someone had socked me right in my stomach. For a long time, I've been an advocate with regard to breast cancer, working in different venues. But when it happened to me, I still didn't know what to do because it was now me. It became very personal, very personal.
I felt the lump 2 months after I'd had my third clean mammogram. I was in the middle of the First Union Wachovia bank merger. I was living in North Carolina. This was in the middle of July, and just thought, well, I'll deal with this in September because, I like the summer. Being diagnosed at 36 was really unbelievable. I didn't know anybody who had ever been diagnosed that young. I completely relocated my life. I moved back into my parents' house in Philadelphia.
When I was diagnosed, I was just back at work. I have 2 small boys. Sam was 3 and Ben was 1. I was still breastfeeding Benjamin when I found the lump in my underarm. The idea that there was something growing in me, and yet here I was also feeding my child, was pretty terrifying.
When I was 13, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had a lumpectomy, and she didn't really want to do chemo, and so they didn't get it all. So it came back off and on for 17 years. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why, after she passed away, I had such motivation to do something because I always felt like she should have done more.
Well, 2008 was a really horrible year. I was diagnosed with a severe shellfish allergy. September, I lost my job, and in November, I had a PET scan, and the PET scan revealed that I had breast cancer that metastasized. I was 43 years old and thinking, oh my gosh, here we go again.
I decided to get tested for the breast cancer gene because it was so prevalent in my family. My cousin had breast cancer, my aunt had breast cancer, my grandmother had cancer, my grandfather had cancer. I found out that I was BRCA2 positive. It wasn't shocking because I knew deep down I did. I always knew. It was sort of just like this sad resignation that, okay, this is what I have to deal with now.
My friends and family made me feel real special. My children, Chanda and Julian and Jamila, they were wonderful. I had this group of girlfriends that had already been through breast cancer. On those days that I wasn't upbeat, they just kind of talked me through it.
My sister Abigail and my husband Douglas were huge supports. Douglas helped me look at what was really in front of me, rather than letting me lie there in that pile of tears.
My family was unbelievably supportive. My husband Glenn, my aunt and my cousin who've been through this, and my mother-in-law Lynn drove me to the doctor every single time. My brother was so happy that I did it.
My dad, Jay, my mom, Arlene, and my sister, Abby, we are a fearsome foursome. My dad is the best nurse on the planet. My mom is great in a crisis. My sister fills in the gaps, and she's funny. And then I have family from YMCA Camp Takwa that I can't live without.
So my father died when I was 6. He'd been diagnosed with breast cancer before I was born. Cancer was something that my family lived with. It was something that was always a part of my life. But losing my father was pretty awful, and my sister and I had always held on to the fact that there were the 3 of us. And even though we didn't have my father, we had each other. And when my mother and my sister were diagnosed with breast cancer, that then called into question the idea that all 3 of us would still be there for each other, which was scary.
My mother was sick for 17 years, so from when I was 13 till I was 30. But we never talked about it, ever. And to this day, that's sort of one of the things I really regret the most. I think it was just sort of her way of dealing, and my way as well, of sort of just not accepting the fact that she really was really sick.
I remembered in church, the pastor called me up for prayer just before the surgery, said, we're going to pray for Reverend Blake. And my mom was sitting in the audience. I hadn't told her. You can just imagine the look on her face when she said, "You didn't tell me that you had cancer." And I said, "Well, Mom, I just didn't want you to worry."
I think before you get gene tested, you have to really think through what you're going to do with this information. It will really affect your life. So I knew going in that if I was positive, I was going to get a mastectomy. I knew that I would take my chances of getting breast cancer from around 80% that I would get it to almost 95% that I wouldn't get it. I think Living Beyond Breast Cancer's mission is so amazing because it empowers women with knowledge. I believe in doing as much as you can to be informed, to have as much control over your health and your life as possible.
I try to attend all of the metastatic breast cancer conferences. It's a smaller group of women. The grace and the wisdom and the love in that room is incredible. And the people that speak at that conference, those people really care about what they do. And they care about their patients. And you're not just a number. You're with a lot of people who are there for a common purpose.
One thing about breast cancer and any type of diagnosis of cancer, your mortality hits you right in the face. Am I going to be around? Is it going to come back again? When I talk to people about it, I said my faith played a major part in going through this.
My diagnosis was really hard for my mother. She was diagnosed 15 years before me, and the treatment was very different. And the 20 years before that, when my father was in treatment, again, everything was very different. But that sticks with you. And I think the difficulty of what he went through and the difficulty of what she went through was what was on her mind as she approached my experience. Hopefully, before my children reach an age at which it becomes a concern, so much work will have been done, and there won't actually be a need for a worry. And I'm holding on to that. It's a piece that's important to me. There will be ways in which I can keep my children safer.
My older daughter, Mackenzie, is 9, and we call her Maxie after my mom. And I have a daughter, Sydney, who's 7. And I've been very open and honest with my daughters about everything, because I know well enough that if you don't tell them the truth, they're going to think the absolute worst. So I, from the very beginning, told them how their grandmother passed away and then what I did. And they can also see my scars. I mean, it's pretty clear. But in the same vein, I don't want to scare them. My mom missed out. All she wanted was grandkids. And, I feel so sad that she never got to meet my daughters. I feel so sad that they never got a chance to know her. And it's something we talk about all the time. And the fact that I know that I will be around to meet my grandchildren and to be a grandmother to them, and that my daughters won't have to do this alone, that is all the affirmation I need that I did the right thing.
For me, living with metastatic disease, in some ways it's a bit of a noose. It is something that is ever present. Knowing that I will always have something. I will always be tested. I will always be on some sort of drug the rest of my life. I know that potentially the road is a little shorter, and I don't want the road to be shorter. I want the road to be as long as everybody else. I'm proud to be a breast cancer survivor, but I don't want it to be the thing that defines me.